Let me just wait. It's preparing. It takes a second, but once we do, hopefully I won't get the double echo because I'm not using my earbuds, and I think that's what was the cause of it last
Oh,
two times.
oh,
All right. Using my earbuds, and I think that's what was the cause of it. Nope, that is not the cause. Hey, everybody. Anyway, I will figure out my double thing in a second. We are going live. We have 9 days left until Faces of Grief launches. I can't believe that it's this that soon. And now today I'm doing a countdown. So we're doing the different authors. I did Bill and Dan already. Now I've got Marty on the call with me, so I'm really excited about and let's having just to have a little conversation about what the book is all about and that kind of stuff. So what the book is all about. So Marty, introduce yourself.
so hello, everyone. So my name is Martie McNabb, and I am a part of Faces of Grief, as well as Jason. And that's how I got to meet Jason and meet some of the other, like Bill and Dan and Samantha, of course, who pulled us all together, and Brooke and Elizabeth, and just some most Alexa, all these amazing people. So I've had the opportunity to get to know them better and to be a part of my first anthology. And so, a little bit about me: I live part time in Vermont with my 88-year-old mom who just had spine surgery like a month ago. And then I live part time in a camper van named Brooklyn. She's 21 feet long. She's little, but she's mighty. And I live part time with my wife and mother in law, a 90-year-old mother in law, out in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And needless to say, as everybody in this community has talked about, and everybody in my end of life and death care work over the last decade, that I've gathered people around, because often at my story sharing events called Show and Tales, people bring objects from people who have passed away. And because they hold that the person gifted it to them or left it behind, it still has some bit of their essence in it, brings back a memory of a special time and keeps their memory alive. So I'm just grateful for that experience over the last over a decade. But then 4 years ago, at the start of COVID, 4.5 years ago, it's hard to believe, I lost my dad. And then quickly afterwards, I ended up, by I think May, I had lost another 6 friends. Um, and then by the 18th month, I ended up losing about 18 people in total. So since the start of 2020, I've lost over 25 friends and family members. And so when a good friend reached out to me, knowing what I'd gone through, and said she had heard from Alexa, actually, about this book, and introduced me to Samantha from Grief Hab, I was like, why not? I don't see myself as a writer, but I know, like you do, Jason, how important it is to share our stories. And this is one of the ways to share our stories. So
yeah, 100%. Like I didn't see myself as a writer either. Like I didn't expect to be an author in a book, and then this opportunity came, and I'm like, I have been telling my stories though on different podcasts, and I did my first keynote this summer in New Orleans, which was awesome. So I have been really diligently finding all these opportunities to tell my story. I just didn't think it would be in written form this quickly. Yeah, and then the opportunity came, and I'm like, let's go for it.
absolutely, absolutely. And it's interesting that you say that, because I was in, you said you were a keynote in this summer. I ended up, well, I was in a keynote, but did you say New Orleans?
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I was like. Wait a minute, because I was just there 3 weeks ago for the National Funeral Directors Association convention.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, we
And
have to talk because I wanted
yeah,
I was thinking like after I did my keynote with the Compassionate Friends, and I'm
Yeah.
thinking there's got to be other like grief connected people, and the funeral directors is one of the ones that I've been thinking about because they must have. I was thinking they must have a conference of some sort. Yeah.
Oh yes, and I have friends right now from that conference, from Greenwood Cemetery and from Sparrow Funeral House in Brooklyn, and also a friend of mine who's a funeral director in Brooklyn, and a new friend who I met at the convention who's part of For Grief, the
Hmm.
organization called For Grief, and they're all out in LA right now, along with one of my best friends, Gail Rubin, who's the doyen of death, for the Enwell conference. Uh,
Mm.
and the Grief-tastic book fair that my new friend Megan Jarvis is running this weekend. So anyway, this is a perfect time to talk about all things grief.
Yeah. Well,
Sadly,
especially with the holidays coming up and everything, and it's such a hard time for, for so many people. And I'm so glad that this book is going to be out before the
yeah.
holidays so that it can get into people's hands that really are going to need it.
Yeah, it's a great gift. It would be a great gift. And I know it's pre-launch, right?
Yeah.
It's you can order it in advance.
Yep.
And then it goes like it's available on the third. Is it the third? Is that
Yeah.
what? Yes.
So I will put in the comments my pre-order link. I have one. I've already sold a couple of, I think about maybe 20 books already because people are really wanting to, get their hands on it as soon as they can. I think and my understanding it launches officially on the 3rd, and we'll probably be able to get them by like the 9th or 10th, like physical copies in hand. So definitely before the holidays they'll be available. We can get it into people's hands with signatures and all that kind of good stuff.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, as we before we started this conversation, I mentioned that I'm a part-time digital nomad. Well, in this kind of thing. So I've been trying to figure out how am I going to do this?
Yep.
How am I gonna have these copies and like because I agree that I have a friend whose daughter wrote a book and it's always nice to have their signature, to have a signed copy.
Yeah.
I prefer that. So, but I'm like, how am I going to negotiate this? But I'll
Yeah.
figure it out. I'll get a small amount and take it around in Brooklyn, my camper van.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's my plan too, is to have like a little small little stock in my own home, so that this way I can bring it to the different conferences and sell them in person and that kind of stuff. Because I think it's really important that in person contact, that one-on-one connection thing, because we're all built for connection, and the more we can do that, I think the better off we'll all be.
Absolutely. I love that because the thing that I say about show and tales, it's called thing tied show and tales. So things that matter,
Mm.
is building deeper connections, community, and legacy. Because
Yeah.
this is part of our legacy is being a part of this book and helping people, um, you know, resonate with the story, connect with the story, and realize how powerful it is to write your own story. How,
Yeah.
even if it's not in writing, like tell your own story, how
Yeah.
important it is. Yeah.
And you were saying about being the whole digital nomad, like I'm a really big believer that you can forge really authentic connection using digital formats like Zoom or the video chats. And my whole community of bereaved siblings is all done virtually. And in fact, and then there's the touch points of getting together at conferences or people meeting up for lunch and creating grief buddies. Like the one beautiful thing that comes out of my weekly meetings is that people forge these relationships, and they go out for lunch together, or they're traveling to another city for vacation and they meet up. And seeing these images of people doing that, it's like the digital world meets the real world, and just that combo is absolutely phenomenal if it's done well, right?
Yeah.
There's so much BS on like social media and stuff like that, but there's really a lot of authentic connections as well.
Oh, there's no question. During COVID, as you know, my story in Faces of Grief is related. Although none of my friends died from COVID directly, I have a couple of friends I'm pretty sure didn't seek out medical care uh,
Mm,
because of it. Not because they were afraid of getting COVID, but they were afraid of being a burden.
yeah.
Uh, so I'm sad about that, but it wasn't COVID related. But I am so, I met so many people during COVID. I hosted and will probably go back to hosting monthly story sharing gatherings on
Hmm.
Zoom. And after, once things kind of got a little back to normal, which who knows when that is ever going to be, um, I did end up meeting, I ended up meeting a bunch of the people in person, and it was our connection though was formed, our deep connection, and was formed online. And
Yeah.
so there's absolutely no question in my mind that I'm grateful for it, because I have friends all over the world now where
Yeah.
I wouldn't, and because I live kind of isolated here in Vermont with my mom, and then kind of isolated because my wife is not particularly a people person either. Um, so I'm grateful for this activity and ability to connect online like we're just doing now.
Yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
the beauty of your story is that, you know, um, there's so many things, but like it's that the forging those relationships and thinking there were so many instances that around death and the pandemic that people don't realize. One is that at a time where you need connection the most, you don't have it. They wouldn't let people into the rooms. They wouldn't let people into the hospitals. They wouldn't let people connect, have funerals or have celebrations of life in person. And so when you need that physical contact, when you need that connection the most, is it's when it's ripped away. And, how do you deal with something like that? Right. And the other thing is that, like, those secondary may not be COVID may not have been the cause of death, but not seeking medical attention when needed, or avoiding the hospitals because everyone's saying you're going to get put on a vent as soon as you walk through the door, and so it's like to stay away, but then you're not getting the critical care you need, or hospital wings didn't have the staffing or were closed, and so the other stuff that needed to get treated didn't get treated, and so the death wasn't a COVID death, but it was definitely an effect of what was happening in our healthcare system at that particular moment, and so we have to deal with all of those even years later.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I was grateful. My dad passed in February of 2020.
All right, yeah.
He had a stroke, a major stroke, like 4 years before. So he was 88. It was his time.
Mm-hmm.
We had that conversation. It wasn't unexpected, right? And I'm just so grateful that it happened when it did, because we were able to have a memorial service for him
Mm-hmm.
for the lockdown, before everything closed up. And I am, like you said, but listening to the stories of so many other people who weren't able to have that, it's
Yeah.
really tough. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and when I started my peer support group for bereaved siblings it was 2019. It was probably about 8 or 9 months before the pandemic really rolled in, and we had conversations like it's only a matter of time before we're going to see some siblings come in with COVID related deaths. It's not, it's not that if it's going to happen, it's when it's going to happen, and so and then I didn't know at that point. I was like, doing it fully virtual, that before 6 months before
And
the
before,
pandemic.
right.
I didn't know that timing was going to be so needed, because then once the pandemic rolled in, And now there are a lot of in-person groups that are getting back in person, but
Right.
I know the value of a fully online format. And so I told my people, don't worry if everybody goes back, we're still going to be here because, they were worried about like, oh, if everyone goes back, then I don't have any resources where I am, or they're nomads themselves. Like I need that connection. They need, even though they may not be, people-y kind of people, like we still need people, right?
I love how you say that. Like my mother and my wife, they're not people-y kind of people,
Right.
but we still people non-people-y people still need people.
Yeah,
Yes,
right. And
absolutely.
even if it's those little touch points, right? Like it's little touch points. And once they're fully stripped away, then that, I mean, we get into, we can easily go into that isolation mode, which is not really sometimes great, especially when dealing with grief.
Absolutely. Yeah, it only makes it worse, I think.
Yeah.
We're in
Yeah.
it. It helps to know that we're not alone.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's also kind of going back to the importance of the book is even if you can't get that connection, you can read it. And I know I put out a weekly email, and there are people that I get emails from that don't come to any of the virtual meetings that I run, but they read the email, seeing what I'm going through, and and just through that, just through the written word, it makes them feel less alone, that they're not the only one going through it, that there are other people out there. And even if they never come to even one meeting, the value of knowing that and that connection is invaluable.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important to feel like we're not alone.
Yeah, 100%. All
Yeah,
right, cool. Thank you so much for being able to hop on. We have so much more to talk about as far as resources and stuff like that. We'll definitely
absolutely.
connect over the course of the next, few weeks or a few months or probably a few years, but
You're
let's
right. Absolutely,
But
Jason.
9 days. I can't wait. I know this has been a labor of love for all of us. And so I just also want to thank Grief Hab and Samantha Ruth for putting this whole project together, because she's been like the driving force to connect us all and put us
Absolutely.
all in one place. And just the variety of stories is so intriguing.
I know. I can't wait. Like just for everybody who's watching, it's like we know little bits and pieces of people's stories, but we haven't had a chance to read them. So I can't wait to get to know these people that we've hung out with for the last like 6 or 8 months. Get to
Yep.
know a little bit more about them and what they're up to and the wonderful resources and programs that they've created to
Yeah.
change the narrative, change the acceptance and the conversation about grief and how important it is to talk about it and
Yep.
not hide it and be open to it and share it. It again, as we said, it helps so much to not feel alone.
Yeah, my biggest, I think, mindset shift is, especially being part of this project, is because there's stories of non-death related grief. I've always in my head have connected grief with the death of a loved one. Um, I still think the language needs to shift because like these secondary losses and these, tertiary losses, they're not that they're not important. They're just, for me, it feels a little different. But I don't think we have the language to really isolate that as something different. And there are some similarities, of course, but like the foundation is not the same. And I just feel that it definitely has shifted my perspective on that, and the importance to develop a larger vocabulary for grief. I think is really critical because it's so minute. Like I always think of we have in English, we have one word for snow, like, or snowflake, right? And in Alaska, they have like 30 because based on the structure of the crystals and the type and this, right? So I think we need that for grief. We need a larger vocabulary so that this way everyone feels included. And because there's so many different invalidations in the grief space. Like I know for a long time, me being a bereaved sibling, that was, I didn't even realize I was supposed to grieve because my grief was so invalidated over the grief of my parents. And I think there's a lot of other marginalized grief out there as well.
Oh, absolutely. No question. We've got tons of it in this country and this world.
Yes. So let's talk about it more.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's
Awesome.
what
Thank
this
you.
book is about. So
Yeah.
thank you
So
so much for inviting me to be here and be a part of your community as
awesome.
well.
Yeah, and as I said, we'll connect offline, and we'll figure out some resources that we can share, and how to collaborate with one another, because that's my goal, is just to really get out of my own comfort zone and my own little grief bubble, and be more inclusive, and just get to connect and network and do some amazing things with some amazing people like yourself. So
I would love that, Jason.
awesome. Great.
Yeah.
So click the comments. You'll see a pre-order link. 9 days to go. I'm super excited. Thank you so much, and have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.